From bureaus worldwide, this is FSF.
Thank you, Benji. Welcome to Tuesday's programme. I've had a good day. I hope you've had a good day. It's coming up for 3 minutes past 5 it is. Live we are. Right now on multiple platforms. richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2, the TuneIn Radio app and Trigger Warning and all the rest of it. I'm looking forward to this programme. You can tweet me right now. The Twitter handle is at Richie Allen Show. Oh, yes it is.
Richie Allen.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, the Israeli-born jazz legend, saxophonist extraordinaire Gilad Atzmon joins the programme this hour, well, to discuss anti-Semitism, allegations, and the UK's chief rabbi who has declared that Jeremy Corbyn is unfit for office. We'll talk about Ephraim Mirvis with Gilad Atzmon this hour and much more besides. And in the second hour, the filmmaker and the activist Matt Landman, Frankenstein's the movie, returns to the Richie Allen Show. He'll be on the programme in hour 2. You don't want to miss him. And as usual, if there is something you'd like to put to my guests, you can do so by tweeting me, and I will do my best to put it to them, as I always do. Tuesday's programme. It is November 26, 2019. Indeed it is. And today, the last day. In fact, the deadline is passed. It has. Once Benji began reading the news, you've missed your deadline to vote, to register. So if you wanted to vote on the 12th of December in the general election, you would have had to register by 5 o'clock today. So tough titty, said the kitty, if you didn't get in. There you are. Thought you might like to know that. However, if you want to apply to vote by post, you have until... Oh no, hang on now. Hang on. If you want someone to vote on your behalf, you have until 5 o'clock on December 4th. Okay, there you are. But in England, Scotland and Wales, if you wanted to apply to vote, you needed to have done that by 5 o'clock. I bet you're devastated if you didn't get in. So the fallout then from the chief rabbi, Jeremy Corbyn, has insisted that there's no place for anti-Semitism within Labour, and those guilty of anti-Jewish racism have been, in his words, brought to book. He said the Jewish community should engage with him. And this is after the criticism by the chief rabbi Ephraim Mirvis, who wrote in the Times. He claimed a new poison, sanctioned from the very top, had taken root in the party. Now, I'd done a bit of digging into Ephraim, and I was able to go back to July this year when he was triumphantly celebrating Boris Johnson's succession. Well, his accession to the Conservative Party leadership and therefore becoming Prime Minister. It stinks to high heaven, but I said all this morning on the silly YouTube live stream. Do you want to hear a bit of what Jeremy Corbyn had to say? The later Lieber? Yeah, I really am going to put my teeth in. Bear with me. Let's hear Corbyn then. Here he is at an event today. He doesn't mention the chief rabbi, but he does say this.
Anti-Semitism in any form is vile and wrong. It is an evil within our society. It's an evil that grew in Europe in the 1920s and onwards and ultimately led to the Holocaust. There is no place whatsoever for anti-Semitism in any shape or form or in any place whatsoever in modern Britain, and under a Labour government it will not be tolerated in any form whatsoever. Yes. I want to make that clear.
Yes, there you are, right? That was the later... I know, it sounds like I've just lost my mind. That was the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. What about the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, and the leader of the Lib Dems, Joe Swinson? What did they say? Did they make hay? Well, the sun was shining. You can be sure they did.
I do think it is a very serious business when the chief rabbi speaks as he does. I've never known anything like it, and clearly it is a failure of leadership on the part of the Labour leader that he has not been able to stamp out this virus in the Labour Party.
I think it is hugely worrying that the Chief Rabbi has felt compelled to make such an intervention in an election campaign. It speaks volumes about the genuine fear that people in the Jewish community feel about Jeremy Corbyn and his inability to tackle anti-Semitism.
Yeah. What about Lord Dubs, Alf Dubs, that's D-U-B-S, Labour peer Lord Dubs? Well, he's an interesting character, is Alf. He was born in Prague, in the old Czechoslovakia, and he was one of nearly 700 Czech residents, mostly Jewish, saved by the stockbroker Nicholas Winton. The Kinder Transport, you remember that? You must have heard about it in school. And they fled the Nazis on the Kinder Transport. They came to the UK. His father, Lord Dubs, was Jewish. Now, he's not happy with the Chief Rabbi at all. And this is interesting because the media, God bless them, had to cover what Lord Dubs said. They couldn't ignore it. Here he is.
I am bitterly disappointed what he said. I don't accept a lot of what he said. And insofar as the Labour Party is at fault, it's that we should have acted a bit quicker. That's the only thing. I'm sorry to be critical of you guys, but if we'd acted a bit quicker, what we're doing now is the right thing. And I think for today of all days, for the Chief Rabbi to be attacking the Labour Party in this particular way and attacking our leader is unjustified and unfair, and I am bitterly, bitterly disappointed that he's done that.
Now, Lord Dubs, right, fled the Nazis. Very interesting story, the Kinder Transport. It's been dramatised on the BBC. It's a very interesting story indeed. He fled the oppression and possibly certain death. He'd have a strong opinion. His opinion would be very interesting, so they had to cover it. But is he the wrong Jew? This happens all the time. Whenever I interview Jews, they turn out to be the wrong Jews. You know, I've had lots of Jewish men and women on this programme over the years, prominent and not so prominent, and usually they've taken a very dim view of the state of Israel, so later on they've been declared by others to be the wrong Jews. In fact, I challenge opponents of this programme all the time, saying, I have plenty of Jews on, but they're the wrong Jews. Anyway, Stephen Pollard is an odious little man, and an odious little man is he. He's the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, wouldn't put fish and chips in it. He's run several stories on this programme, but he is so woefully inept, incompetent and incontinent as a journalist that he never picked up the phone to me to offer me right of reply. That's journalism 101. If you criticise somebody, no matter what it is you say, you must offer them right of reply. But they never did with me. Pollard is wretched. Anyway, he was on Sky News today. He's blocked me on Twitter as well. He was on Sky News today and he was properly peeved. He was peeved because Jeremy Corbyn will not do what certain Jewish leaders tell him to do. How dare he?
If you speak to any single representative body of British Jews, whether it's the Board of Deputies, the Jewish Leadership Council, or now the Chief Rabbi, they'll tell you the same thing, which is the Labour Party. It's not only that they're not doing anything enough, they're not listening to what the Jewish community says. When the Jewish community speaks, their response isn't...
When the Jewish community speaks, you better do what you're bloody well told, says Stephen Pollard, eh?
Speaks. Their response isn't to say, we're sorry, how can we make this better? It's to say, go away and stop making trouble.
Well, he hasn't done that, actually. He hasn't said, go away and stop making trouble. He's just ignored them, is what Corbyn has done. He's pretended that they don't exist, right? But this, I wouldn't recommend that course of action now, Jeremy, but, you know, each to his own. This is the crux of it here.
Community says when the Jew enough, they're not listening to what the Jewish community says. When the Jewish community speaks, their response isn't to say, we're sorry, how can we make this better? It's to say, go away and stop making trouble.
Why should it be? Why should it be when the Jewish community speaks? Why should it be that they say we're very sorry? What if they don't agree with you? What if they actually don't agree with you? And they say, we don't agree with you, you odious fat little man. You fake journalist who runs hit pieces on people without giving them right of reply. Maybe they did that, maybe. Anyway, what about Alf Dubs then? This is a sticky wicket for Stephen Pollard. Lord Dubs fled the Nazis with his Jewish father. Doesn't his opinion count? The point was put to him by the Sky News presenter.
Lord Dubs has been interviewed widely today, questioned a great deal about his friendship with Jeremy Corbyn and whether or not he believes Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. And he said he absolutely doesn't believe that Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic or that the Labour Party is.
Yes, and, I respect Alf Dubs hugely. I worked with him some years ago. He's a man of immense integrity and ability. I just think he's completely wrong on this.
He's completely wrong.
I mean, if you talk to Luciana Berger, who was driven
Luciana Berger
out of the Labour Party, talk to Ruth Smeeth.
Ruth Smeeth.
Talk to Louise Ellman.
Louise Ellman.
Or talk to Dame Margaret Hodge, who actually said to...
I'd love to talk to Dame Margaret Hodge, the paedophile cover-up person. Oh, yeah, Islington. We talked a lot about that, didn't we? Hey, I'd love to talk to Margaret Hodge. As for Berger and Smeeth and Ellman, I have no idea. I understand they were subjected to some abuse on Twitter. I don't stand by that. I have no time for it. But they're big girls. And we know that big girls don't cry, don't we? When they get a bit of trolling. Anyway, let's leave that particular story there, shall we? You're going to have big girls don't cry going around your head now for the rest of the evening. He's the wrong Jew, is Lord Dubs. I had a giggle on this subject earlier, so we won't move on just yet. I had a giggle. The Ginger Ninja interviewed the old Tory Malcolm Rifkind on the rabbi and anti-Semitism and all that jazz. But the Ginger Ninja wanted to ask Malcolm Rifkind about Islamophobia in the Tories. Rifkind tells Burley that as a journalist for so many years, Boris Johnson would look for headlines. Thus, he would look to be sensational. Hence, the burqa comments and comments about pickaninnies with watermelon smiles. That's what Rifkin says anyway.
What I do believe is that on a whole spectrum of issues, not just a question of Islamic issues, on a whole spectrum of issues, Johnson, who had most of his career was a journalist, a working journalist, looking like most journalists look for headlines, said sometimes amusing, sometimes offensive remarks. They were very silly. Since he's become a national politician, holding the most senior office, then we're seeing a much more sober approach, and it's pity it didn't happen earlier.
Well, that's all right then, is what you're saying.
I didn't say it's all right, I said it's different. The problem, now hold on, I'm sorry, you can continue the whole interview on this if you wish.
Shut up, Kay.
If you wish. But the problem with the Labour Party at the moment is fundamentally different. And it's not just I'm saying that, or you're questioning me about it. It is that the Labour Party themselves, very large sections of their membership, have either resigned from the Labour Party, told people not to vote for their party, or in other ways have condemned Corbyn as being someone who has a fundamental affinity with people who are extreme anti-Semites. He's had it over many years, and he's continued to have it in recent times.
Okay.
That's not my view. We all know that is the political
so
situation.
Be safe in the knowledge that I am giving every member of the Labour Party who comes on the programme today a very good kicking.
What was that?
Be safe in the knowledge that I am giving every member of the Labour Party who comes on the programme today a very good kicking.
What kind of fuckery are you?
Okay, we love Kay.
Be safe in the knowledge that I am giving every member of the Labour Party who comes on the programme today a very good kicking.
Oh, she's marvellous, Kay. No praise like self-praise, eh? She's not giving anybody a good kicking. She's no Jeremy Paxman. Anyway, Lady Ginger of the Ninja never fails, does she? What else about Malcolm Rifkind?
And when he comes out with things like women in burqas look like letterboxes, and as a result, women with their children have letters thrown at them in the street, that cannot be defended.
Did they have letters thrown at them in the street? Because that's an exercise in futility, isn't it? If you've got a stamped envelope and you're ready to put it in your local red post box, and you see a woman with a burqa and you're just overwhelmed with the urge to throw the letter at her. Has that really gone on? That's what I'm asking. I mean, if it has gone on, I don't agree with it at all. And I absolutely endorse the right of Muslim women to wear whatever the bloody hell they want. It's their right. You know, the only time I'd have any issue with that is when they're dealing with people in, I don't know, maybe in, I don't mean to say banks because I agree with Boris Johnson, but when they're going into the post office or places like that, it might be a bit courteous to at least reveal your face. But I absolutely have no problems with people wearing what they want. Oh, Jesus.
indefensible.
I didn't defend it. I did quite the opposite. I said, you're absolutely right. That was a very stupid remark to make. It was described as a stupid remark.
It was stupid, but we can be stupid, can't we? We can make stupid jokes. We can be immature at times. God knows I'm immature 21 hours out of every 24, you know. And I know it doesn't hurt anybody. I'm just a muppet, me. And that's just the way it is, right? Sometimes it's funny, most of the time it isn't, but it makes me laugh. Johnson is a clown. I loathe him and everything he stands for. Of course I would. I'm not going to say the S word again, but you know what I am. I despise the man. But we've got to allow people to make silly wisecracks about other people's dress sense. Otherwise, where does it end, right?
Mark at the time, and that is what all politicians at some time in their careers have come out with remarks of that kind. I could give you a long list of former prime ministers.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. Let's move on. 19 minutes past the hour. Demonstrations against LGBT inclusive education have been permanently banned outside a primary school in Birmingham. Now, we've been following this with great interest. It's important, this story. High Court judges ruled in favour of an exclusion zone to remain around the school, which is Anderton Park Primary School in Birmingham. That has been targeted by protesters for several months now, as you know. The judge said, and it's Mr. Justice Warby, he said the protests had an adverse effect on pupils, residents and staff. And this led to 21 teachers being treated for stress. So these protests have been permanently banned. Well, here's Sky News reporter Becky Johnson with the details.
Well, the head teacher says she feels vindicated. She always refused to change any of the teaching in the school. She maintained that equality education was a vital part of growing up in modern Britain, and she maintained that she wasn't teaching young children sex education, that the message on LGBT issues was simply to tell children that some people have two mums, some people have two dads, and that's okay. And the High Court judge agreed with her. He said that he was banning these protests permanently, that the protesters had spread misinformation about what the school was teaching. He said in some cases it was gross misrepresentation of the teaching staff. He cited an example where an imam who was invited to address the crowd said that the school had paedophiles in it who were following a paedophile agenda. So the judge really very, very critical of these protests. He said that they distributed leaflets saying that the school was promoting homophobia. He said that that was not the case. He said any teaching on LGBT issues was both limited and lawful, and he agreed that none of it was sex education, as the protesters were claiming.
Now, don't lose your collective shite. I have some sympathy with those Muslim parents, as you well know. Now, don't lose your minds. Listen carefully before you go bananas. I think they've jumped the gun, the parents. I think they've jumped the gun. And I worry about this. I wonder, was it a false flag? I know. When was the last time I said anything was a false flag? It's got to be a long time ago. I wonder, because what was going on in that classroom wasn't really at the moment of any great consequence. But listen now. What is planned for next September, that's September 2020, that will have profound consequences on children? And by protesting something that's not really happening at the moment and getting banned, it might serve the system. Do you understand where I'm going with that? This might be some sort of false flag, because the reporter, she explains that today's High Court ruling will have profound consequences on any protests about the new sex education curriculum which will come in next year. Are you following me? They're very cute, these people. Here she is, Becky.
Look, for several months earlier this year, these protests, which took place on an almost daily basis, thrust this primary school in Birmingham into the national spotlight. And the judge's decision today matters not just to this school, but actually to schools across England, because from September next year, relationships education is going to become compulsory in all primary schools. Yeah. And the message sent by the High Court today is that anyone choosing to protest protests, the nature of which we've seen here, and the spread of misinformation about what will be taught simply won't be tolerated.
You see, it's a false flag. There was very little going on in that primary school to concern parents this year. the mostly Muslim parents and some conservative Christian parents were worried, lost their collective shit, went bananas, got banned by the High Court, but it's really next year that the crazy shit is going to be introduced to 5-year-olds. And now the decision has been made. I think I might be onto something, you know. I think I might just very well be onto something. This is the Richie Allen Show. It is Europe's most listened to independent radio show. That's a stone cold fact, by the way. And I love reminding certain people of it too. Nothing's gonna stop it either. This is Stevie Wonder. Gilad Atzmon is in the wings. He'll join me in a couple of minutes. Don't miss him. Back in 3. 26 minutes past the hour. That's Stevie Wonder, Higher Ground on the Richie Allen Show, live on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester. We're on the TuneIn app as well, multiple platforms around the world, nothing like it. What a day it has been today. What are we, 16 days or thereabouts to the election? Interesting day today. No place for anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, says Jeremy Corbyn. We've talked about it in the monologue. The chief Rabbi Ephraim Mirvis, writing in the Times, said a new poison sanctioned from the very top has taken root in the Labour Party. And he accused the party of mendacity when the party claimed that it had been dealing with the issue of anti-Semitism among its ranks. Let's welcome back to the programme an old friend of ours, a genius saxophonist, a fantastic writer, geopolitical commentator, and sometimes a bit of a curmudgeonly blighter. Let's welcome back to the programme our friend Gilad Atzmon. Gilad, welcome back.
Hey man, I'm very happy to be with you. What a day.
What a day. It's about time. It's been ages since you were on. Right, listen, I'm going to get stuck into you. You've got all the time in the world to speak, of course, as you always do. My opinions on these things are well known. I've got to be fair. A broken clock is right twice a day. These Jewish activists in the country claiming that anti-Semitism is happening in the Labour Party, they can't be wrong all the time. There must be something going on there. What do you think?
I cannot comment as I didn't study the situation in the Labour Party, but I don't have any reason to believe that the Labour Party is more anti-Semitic than any other party. And by the way, before we even go there, shouldn't we first define what is anti-Semitism? Because as far as I can tell, at the moment, every criticism of Israel, Zionist bodies, Jewish lobbies, relentlessly active in this country is realized by those bodies as anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Which means that they believe actually that their politics, their ideology, their culture, their identitarian views are actually beyond criticism. Now, this is what we tend to call supremacy. I think that some people in the left are very upset when they see these kind of symptoms, if they see such symptoms, attached to white people or to white politics. But when it comes from Israel, Zionist and Jewish supremacists, and there are a few of those, we are supposed to be quiet. And this is why I define Jewish power as the power to suppress criticism of Jewish power. In other words, and I just wrote about it in my daily paper, you know, I'm accused from time to time of talking about conspiratorial Jewish nonsense. And I actually argue that it's complete the opposite. There are no conspiracies. What the chief rabbi, the spiritual leader of Britain's Jews, did this morning or last night is basically in the open a religious leader interfere in politics. It is really, really unusual. It's not conspiratorial. It's all in the open. Everything is in the open. However, thanks to the structure of Jewish power, we cannot really talk about it.
Well, hang on. Let me jump in. this concept of Jewish power. Most Jews I know, and you know the score with me, we've been doing radio shows for years. Most Jews I know, they don't have any affiliation with the likes of Ephraim, who was pretty much, he outed himself last night when his tweets about Boris Johnson were dug up from back in July. This guy is a Tory. It's pathetic and it's rubbish and it's terrible. But however, I know Jewish folks and they have no time for Israel. And most Jewish folks I know have no time for Israel. And they say to me every time I speak to somebody like you, friend or not, they say, well, hang on, Richie. Gilad can talk about Jewish power. We don't understand. I don't understand this notion of Jewish power. Let me finish. They will say that when Corbyn celebrates or backs a mural, now we go back to a couple of years ago, right? Yeah. And I look at that mural, and I'm a big boy, right? And I say what I think, as you well know. That mural of the hook-nosed guy sitting around the Monopoly board, that's the nasty little stereotype that the Jews are a bunch of wizened, creepy little bastards that want to run the world. And I'll have Jewish folks say to me, give over, Gilad, give over. That's bigotry, That's bigotry, and Corbyn shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Go ahead.
You raise a few legitimate points here.
Thank you.
First, you're right. A lot of Jews don't have anything to do with Jewish politics and Jewish power, and this is why, in my work, I realized that I have to define the discussion and to deal with Judaism, to understand what is the J word, to differentiate between Judaism, the religion, Jews, the people, and those who identify politically as Jews. Now, the thing that we refer to as Jewish power is not something that we can attribute to people who are ethnically Jewish or religiously Jewish, but people to identify with Jewish politics. And this is, by the way, not only Zionist, this is Jewish anti-Zionist as well. Jewish anti-Zionists believe that their politics is beyond criticism because they are Jewish.
Give me an example. Give me an example of where an anti-Zionist Jew believes that their political identity is beyond criticism. Give me an example of that.
It is very simple. They tell us that they are in a special position in the movement to criticize Israel. Why? Because Israel is the Jewish state and they are Jews. In a way, they actually put themselves above everyone else in the movement, and this could be very useful. But unfortunately, what they do is they try actually to silence people whom they don't agree with, whether it is Alison Weir, whether it is Gilad Atzmon, and many others. All right, so there are plenty of examples. I will give you another example.
Well, you talk about this. Hang on, just to let our listeners know, Gilad wrote a book called Being in Time, and in that book he takes on this notion of criticism of Israel and Jewish politics kind of has come to be reserved exclusively for anti-Zionist Jews like the academics in the US, of course. Chomsky, you've done a brilliant job of that, by the way. It's an outstanding read. It really is.
Thank you so much. But you raised, I know that Naomi Idrissi was guest on your program. I remember it a few months back.
Yeah.
And even the organization that she is part of, I think that they're called the JVL, Jewish Voice for Labor.
Yeah.
They themselves are extremely racially exclusive, because you, Richie, won't be able to be a member of the organization because you are not qualified racially as a Jew. They say that you can only support them if you are a Jew. If not, you have to be an associate member, and so on and so on. But anyway, you raised another issue, and I'm the last person to advocate for Corbyn for many reasons. But part of them, one reason is that I actually think that the Labour Party and the way it handled this crisis is a disgrace.
Before we talk about that, because I want to give you loads of room to talk about how Labour dealt with it, but before we talk about that...
No, but I want to address because you raised the issue with the...
My apologies, go ahead.
With the mural. As far as I can remember, when they looked into these issues and looked who were the persons who were depicted by the artists, we realized that actually only one or two out of the five were Jewish. It was an anti-capitalist. It by no means was anti-Jewish. Those who were kind of supposed to be with hooked noses, which is supposed to be a Jewish stereotype, were not actually the Jews in the picture, in the mural. So I think that this didn't water. However, what held water for me was the fact that Jeremy Corbyn, a person who is a candidate, he wants to be the prime minister, he was so quick to backtrack on his support of this mural, and he was so quick to backtrack on anything to do with anti-Semitism, including accepting the definition, IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, that is really subscribed to the notion of the suffering of the primacy of the suffering of one people. So although I don't think that there was an issue, I don't agree with you that there was an issue with the mural. I don't think that I'm also kind of denouncing Corbyn here for backtracking on that and on every other issue to do with anti-Semitism. I think that his failure to support Ken Livingstone when he's told the truth about the Avara agreement.
Yes,
was really, really outrageous. And it means that the Labour Party is removed from the notion of truthfulness and ideological integrity, ethical integrity. And this is very, very concerning.
Yeah, this is interesting. Let me jump back in there. This is very interesting because what if I've constantly said on my programs that I believe anti-Semitism is negligible, if not basically non-existent. I've always said that. And I don't, I
agree with you, but this is changing now.
It is changing, but I want to just ask you a question. But before I do, I just want to just a very quick preamble, and then I'll shut up. You'll have all the time in the world, you know that. If we go over 6 o'clock, we'll go over 6 o'clock. Gilad.co.uk. You have to leave, right? But Gilad.co.uk is Gilad's website. Where was it? What was I going to say? Right, so I've said this for years, and I've also explained in detail why I do not believe Israel has any legitimacy in law. Sykes-Picot, of course, the Balfour Declaration. I don't believe Israel has any right to exist, and I'll say that till I die. Now, however, that being said, right, I'm beginning to ask myself a question. Have I become kind of obdurate or obstinate or obtuse? Because some of the biggest screamers, some of the biggest complainers who say that anti-Semitism is rife happen to be some of the most odiously disgusting bastards that ever walked the face of the earth, right? Campaigned against anti-Semitism, Stephen Pollard, these are wretched people, in my opinion. Right, however, that might be blinding me to the fact that there has been a little bit of a kind of a creeping into society of a little bit of nastiness towards people perceived as Jews. Because I've got a mate who listens to this programme. He's really genuine. His name is Carl. Carl is Jewish. He lives in North Manchester. He's read your book. He knows all about you. But he says, Richie, I'm telling you, I'm a big boy, he says. I'm not going to get too worried about it. But he said, we have had the attacks on the cemeteries, and we are seeing more examples of younger lads, sometimes Asian, but sometimes English, shouting at people, particularly when they have the skull cap, and it's getting a little bit nasty. And maybe, I think to myself then, Gilad, maybe because of the nature of the Gideon Falders and all these wretched morons, maybe I'm blind to the fact that maybe there is a little bit of a problem. What do you think?
I think that your instincts lead you in the right direction. I don't have any doubt that anti-Semitism is increasing, and it is increasing rapidly. And the way to look at it, the more they talk about anti-Semitism, the more anti-Semitism we witness. Now, again, we still didn't define anti-Semitism. If anti-Semitism is hatred towards Jews for being Jews, as I would define any kind of hatred to X for being X. If this is what anti-Semitism, I'm not so sure that there was any increase at all. I think that people do oppose people who are self-identified as Jews, especially politically, because we are subject to a relentless Judeo-centric campaign. The Labour Party, the Labour Party is a big party. I think that at a certain stage it had 650,000 members.
Massive.
When 650,000 members, which is, as far as I understand, twice the number of the Jews in this country, see what has been done to their party. And they know that it's a complete nonsense. If Corbyn is guilty of something, is for seeing Jews as ordinary people equal to everyone else. This is his crime. He's a person who doesn't have hatred in his system. It may be delusional politically. We may agree with him, we may not, but there is no hatred.
Yeah, but you don't need hatred. You don't need hatred to stand up to these people. He doesn't need to be, hateful to stand up to the rabbi. Surely it's not hateful to come out very strong and say to the rabbi, listen, you're just a Tory in disguise. You're absolutely wrong. Have a go at him. But he doesn't.
By the way, I don't think that he did it because he's a Tory. And I don't think that he did it because he really thinks that anyone in Britain listens to him. I don't think that your friends, Goyim, Gentiles in Manchester say, oh, the rabbi asked us to vote Tories. No, It doesn't work like that. He did it because he seeks popularity within his own community, within the Jewish street, within the Jewish shtetl. The next question that we have to ask in that regard, what is it about the Jewish street that asks for their leaders, for the spiritual leaders, to take such an unusual act that actually doesn't make Jews more loved? It is actually a very dangerous act. I think that we are, and here I agree with you, I think that we are really proceeding towards a very dangerous time. Now, the rabbi, in his Time article, referred to a statistics in which only 6%, I don't know, I don't trust this statistic, but let's assume for the matter of debate that is genuine, or at least was the research was genuine. 6% of the Jews supposed to vote Labour. 50% will leave the country if Corbyn makes it to number 10, and 87% see Corbyn as an anti-Semite. Now,
that's nonsense, isn't it?
No, I don't know. But if this statistics was true, and I would be the chief rabbi, I would be very, very quiet about it. And the reason is because it suggests foolishly that Jews have very little common as a community with their British neighbors. It means that when it comes to the political division, there are more than 400% underrepresented in the support of the leading opposition party, which is very strange. It means that the views of our prime minister candidate, of Corbyn, is really different from the rest of the Brits. Now, the whole idea of Jewish assimilation was that they become indistinguishable. They become Brits like all other Brits. They become Germans like all other Germans. They become French like all other French. They become Americans like all other Americans. And suddenly, after 200 years that they live in this country, 100 years, some people would say, we are talking about actually late 19th century, so 150 years or 130 years, many generations, all this tribal attitude that differentiate the Jew from his or her neighbor coming along, and this is really, really dangerous, and it defies all those notions of multiculturalism and enlightenment and living amongst others, which is actually those values that a lot of people within the Jewish intellectual world were walking out to spread.
Is it a regional thing? Hang on a second now, because you're describing something there. It's very interesting, this theme, this idea. Very interesting. I'm very interested in it. This notion, very well put, that the rabbi might have made a mistake because he might be exposing that clannish cliquishness of the Jewish community who haven't assimilated, who see themselves as separate. But hang on a second. If that's even true, and I don't know if it is, maybe it's regional, because, again, the Jews I know, I don't recognize that in them. They, most of them, they don't wear the skull cap.
Let me tell you, it is very possible that you are right. It is very possible that these statistics was taken within people who are registered in synagogues and somehow more clannish than others. I cannot say. I'm not. I cannot confirm that these statistics has any merit in it. But if it doesn't have any merit, it's even more stupid to share it with the British public. The fact that this is something that we see all the time, once a week, once a day, every few hours, we see Jewish statistics that reveals how much Jews are hated and how many Europeans are anti-Semite. I cannot think of any other community in Europe, in America, in the West, that is doing very little but measuring how much people don't approve of them, how much people want to kill them. It is really
bizarre.
Very problematic. Now, there is a way to look at it. I argue that if you understand the Jewish identity, the Jewish political complexity, one notion is crucial. You have to start to think about projection. If you want to know what they are, just see what they accuse others of. Let me elaborate.
You're not Freud here. That's very Freudian of you there. I don't know about that. Go on.
It is. So it's Freud and it's good. So it's pro-Jewish, isn't it?
Yeah.
You cannot be accused of being anti-Semitic while talking about
Freud,
about borrowing some ideas from Freud.
But before you carry on, let me ask you a 5 or a 7 word question before you carry on. How can you define that attitude as part of a collective? The Jews are not a collective. They don't think collectively. You're trying to homogenize a group of people there. You surely can't. Surely they can't all think like that. Surely they're not all projecting on the wider population, hatred of themselves.
We are not talking about Jews as a collective here at all. We are talking about their lobby groups,
the lobby groups. Right.
All right. I don't know what Moshe and Yaakov and Yitzchak are saying. I know that a chief rabbi is accusing our opposition leader of being an anti-Semite, of being a racist. Why is he doing it? Is it because Corbyn is really racist? Most people in this country doubt it, whether they like Corbyn or not. But the fact is that Jewish culture, Jewish religion is racially oriented. They operate in communities that are racially exclusive. Their politics is racially exclusive, even when within the Labour Party, as I meant, the JVL is close to people who fail to be Jewish. All right. So there is that element. There is that element of a Jewish culture that we see all the time, and this is what they project. They project their own racial attitude on others. I'm quite sure that you don't think in racial terms when you look, to marry your wife. You were not concerned with a racial compatibility with yours, but in the Jewish society they do.
That's unfair. There's no evidence of that.
Intermarriage is very important for them.
Well, again, I'm challenging you now. We've got 10 minutes, right? Where's the evidence of that? Now, I know, again, I want to recommend to people that they read Being in Time. It isn't about this subject exclusively. It's about identity politics. Yes, Jewish identity.
I will give you the proof for that. Golda Meir said in the 70s, Golda Meir was the Israeli prime minister.
Yeah.
Golda Meir said in the 70s that the biggest danger to Jewish people is not the Palestinians or the Arabs, but intermarriage. What did she mean by that? There is a race that they want to sustain. By the way,
who listened to that? First of all, who listened to that, number one? And number two, I've never believed that Jews are a race anyway.
I didn't conduct a study of a Jewish racism. I assume. I grew up in a Jewish culture.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
I see. I remember why I joined the army and how we treated the Palestinians. I can see how weaponized the Jewish community, according to the statistic that they produce. To tell you that this statistics is genuine, I won't tell you. To tell you that all Jews are racist, I'll definitely won't tell you, because it's quite the opposite. Actually, amongst the Jews, we will find the most dedicated anti-racist, and I just don't want to go contemporary. Let's talk about Jesus Christ. Let's talk about Spinoza. Let's talk about Marx. Let's talk about Otto Weininger. And if you want, in contemporary, let's talk about Israel Shachak or Israel Shamir or Gideon Levy. In fact, the people who are some of the people who are the most vocal anti-racist are Jews. And why? Because they are standing up against something that is very clear to them, because we were raised with this opposition to the other, with this idea of chosenness. We grew up with this idea. Some of us are rejecting it, and this is why Jewish self-haters, so to say, as Jews call them, are actually some of the greatest humanists this world has ever seen.
Now, okay, I'll go with that, but back to the Golda Meir thing. I mean, religious Jews were in shock, obviously, in the 1950s and 1960s. You don't have to be fried to understand if Jewish leaders were saying we need to marry amongst ourselves post World War II. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. By the way, it is open to question. You recover from the Shoah, which is a traumatic event for the Jews, where they really were prosecuted and killed for being Jews. And the next thing that you should ask yourself, what should I do? Maybe I should disappear completely into the crowd. Maybe I shouldn't circumcise my son. Some other people say, you know what? Instead of not circumcising our son, let's circumcise all the American people. So, all right. So there are a lot of ways to deal with this question. I grew up in an Israeli nationalist home, and our answer, which I, by the way, subscribe to, was we must be strong. We must be a nation of warriors. And I really bought into it. And my generation, we were really looking forward to join the army. And then it occurred to me that we're actually punishing the Palestinians for crimes that were committed by Europeans, and I didn't like it, and I left. But there are a lot of different answers to the questions that were raised by the Holocaust.
Yeah. I want to ask you this, right? Just before we finish, and thanks for coming back today. Don't leave it so long, by the way.
I'm always happy, I'm always happy.
I'm the chief cook and bottle washer here. So sometimes when you don't get a call from me, it's not because I'm not reaching out. I'm on my own here, and I tend to get tunnel visioned about the subjects I cover. Now, listen, I want to finish with this. Are we doomed now? I mean, here we are talking about this. I reached out to several of the pro-Zionist Jewish groups in the UK today to offer them a platform on the programme. And they come back very strong with, we don't deal with racists like you. And I tell you what really annoys me about that is that I know there are Jewish men and women in the country and they want to participate in these discussions. They want to get involved. But they're maybe a bit nervous about doing that because the lunatics like Gideon Folder and Stephen Pollard are almost, I don't know, maybe they don't mean to, but they're kind of bullying everybody else into kind of avoiding the discourse, particularly avoiding the discourse with people like yourself, an Israeli who gave it up and came over here. So are we ever going to be able to talk about these things with all the defences down, with the egos put to one side and all the accusations about Holocaust denial and all that crap put to one side, and people can actually talk about this rationally? Are we ever going to get there?
I'm not so sure. And if we judge by our knowledge of Jewish history and Jewish past, we unfortunately witnessing a very, very dangerous trend repeating itself, where we are going for stronger rivalry, stronger exclusionist perception of reality. And when it comes to the bodies that actually try to communicate with good people like yourself, we are very quick to find out that they are actually serving a very similar interest, that it's not universal. This is, for instance, the example of the LJV. They actually show that Corbyn is not a Jewish problem. So they keep it as a Judeo-centric interest rather than British interests. I don't want to say what may be the reaction of the British people, but I think that Jewish history provides us a few insight into this question, and it is very frightening. And I think that they are on a very, very dangerous path, and I really cannot see why they decided, their lobbies, it's not the Jewish people, their lobbies, their institutions decided to take this path just 70 or 80 years after the liberation of Auschwitz. It is painful to watch, but I don't think that there is much we could do.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you made the distinction between the lobbies and Jewish folks, because you were going out on a bombshell there, as you often do when you speak with me, in terms of talking about history shows us that the Jews maybe, I know what you were going to say, and your critics hate you for saying it. You were going to say that, you know, in certain parts of the world over the years, Jews have made themselves unpopular. But I'm glad that you made the distinction between those who act on behalf of Jews, the lobby groups, and Jews themselves, because there's a massive difference, in my opinion. Folks, if you haven't read Gilad's articles on gilad.co.uk, they are really thought-provoking, brilliantly well written, and Being in Time is about one of the best books I've read for many a year, and I recommend that as well. If you want the final word, you can have it.
Bless
by the
you,
way.
man.
Great to have you back on. Where
Thank you so much.
Where can we see you? Just before you go, where are you gigging in the very near future?
See me. I'm touring again all over the world up to Christmas. Just before Christmas, I'll be in Britain for a few days. I'm kind of in too many different places all the time.
Brilliant. When you're back in my neck of the woods, will you please give me a bit of notice?
You know what? Before Christmas, I will give a few talks, private talks in the north. I will let you know.
Do, and
so
I'll be there in a heartbeat.
All right.
About time. Cheers, Gilad. Thanks again for coming on. Love to hear from you as always. Cheers. Gilad Atzmon, gilad.co.uk, live on the Richie Allen Show. It is Tuesday, November the 26th, 2019. That's you and me, will take the headlines now. Don't forget, coming up on the programme in a few minutes' time, Matt Landman joins me. I can't wait to catch up with Matt. It's been an age since he was on the show. Pretty busy show today. I'll read some of your comments as well as we go along. It's over to FSN.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Benji Hire. The leader of the UK's Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, has hit back against criticism from the country's chief rabbi, who accused the party of not doing enough to root out anti-Jewish racism. Carmaker Audi is planning to cut almost 10,000 jobs at its German production sites in order to free up billions of euros for investment in electric vehicles. And smog towers will soon dot along Delhi's skyline as part of efforts to combat air pollution.
Lovely, thank you, Benji. Yes, it's coming up for 3 minutes then past 6. On Tuesday's programme. Got a terrific show lined up for you tomorrow and Thursday. I will tell you later on. I say that and then I forget to do it. I'll give you some details. Right, what have I got to do now? Oh yeah, I've got to do this. Back in about 60 seconds.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbayersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Right, welcome back. While we get Matt Landman on the programme, I better take another tune, I suppose. We'll take a bit of a tune there. Welcome, Jean Ann, back to the west of Ireland, back from the UK there, driving in horrendous weather. Yeah, it's been miserable right across the UK. I got soaked yesterday on the run. I got soaked today on the run. I don't mind, though. When it's grim. Long distance runners. Now, when I say long distance, I do 6 kilometres every day. 6.5 kilometres. It's not really long distance, middle distance, really. But because it can be a bit grim sometimes weather-wise, it kind of makes you kind of happy in a perverse way. Do you understand that? I get kind of happy when the conditions are rough because there's nobody around. Not too many cars, even during the day. And it's rotten and you've got your wet gear on you. And you're out there with your trainers and you're running hard. And I don't know, I get a kind of a perverse kind of joy out of it. That's just me anyway. Maybe I'm a bit of an Egypt, maybe. That's me.
When it hits the bottom,
Music from Prince on the Richie Allen Show. Tuesday's show, 7.5 minutes past the hour it is. Can't wait to speak with my next guest. Is he there? Or is he gone? He might be gone. The call might have just dropped out. Let me try it again. Oh, great ocean. God be with the days. No, I think he is there. Yeah, it's just me. My interface, my program in this big mad radio studio told me I'd lost the call, but I haven't lost the call. I don't need to tell you too much about this guy. He's a terrific activist, social activist and journalist, the man behind FrankenskiesTheMovie.com, which if you haven't seen it, it's an outstanding film. He got into activism around geoengineering some years ago, made this terrific film. You can find him at FrankenskiesTheMovie.com, but these days you can also find him at SperoProtectionClothing.com. That's Spero, S-P-E-R-O, protectionclothing.com, because he has recently unveiled a line of clothing even that will help protect against exposure to EMF radiation and to 5G. I'm delighted to welcome back to the program Mr. Matt Landman. Matt, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you, Richie. Thank you for having me. Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm really good, my friend. Thanks for your patience as well. We were due to speak a week or so ago, and I had serious technical problems here, but thank God we're speaking. Tell me about the line of protection clothing before we go any further. I'm really intrigued about that.
Yes, happily. The marketing slogan for Spero Protection Clothing is, "Wherever there is hope, there is always a silver lining." And Spero is actually Latin. I'm being this truth seeker activist, I've realized that the English language has been tainted along the way with all the homonyms and the Queen of England and what do you do? So I wanted to make the brand something that wasn't in the English language. So I was puzzled at first, but then finally I got back to my roots because I'm actually Italian. And the Spero, the word S-P-E-R-O, is a Latin word, which is hope. So the catchphrase, wherever there's hope, wherever there's Spero, there's always a silver lining. Everything Spero is lined with silver. And so I went to Asia to figure this out. And evidently over in Japan, Korea, China, they don't call it EMF. They call it radiation. And they protect themselves from it. They have protection clothing already. Clothing lined with steel, a steel blend, a steel cotton blend, literal steel, Richie, like 20% and 30% steel, and it deflects radiation. Also, silver does the same thing, and it's antimicrobial, antifungal, and it's actually really comfortable. And so I'm lining hats, and I'm making cell phone pouches, I'm making men's underwear, baby blankets, hooded sweatshirts, t-shirts, camisoles, you name it, it's the future of clothing. So please check it out, SPERO, protectionclothing.com.
SperoProtectionClothing.com.
Really quick, mate.
Go ahead.
I realized that I wasn't reinventing the wheel. I really thought that I was coming up with all this and going to have to reinvent the wheel. It's big business in China and Asia and even in Israel and other countries to protect pregnant women, especially with this protection fabric. So it already existed. I'm just bringing it to the West.
Brilliant. Really good idea. And for listeners hearing about it for the first time, you've tested this, of course. It has been tested and it does work. It does deflect the harmful radiation from the phones and from the nearby masts. It definitely does that. You've had a good old robust trial of the clothing.
Oh, definitely. Well, what I first did is I got myself some really good EMF meters from Germany. I've got a few different types. And I started testing things like Orgonite and these stickers that you put on phones. And I realized that they were all bollocks, mate. They're all bogus. None of them were doing anything. Nothing at all was being done by these $30 stickers or Orgonite, or hardly anything on the market does anything, honestly. So then I started learning about how to protect and how to eliminate the signal 100%. And I started with this copper fabric, and I've done a bunch of videos. Yes, I've tested it over and over again, and there's a lot of testing facilities out of the companies that do it in Japan and Korea and China, and they get it professionally tested as well. But I have done my testing, and basically it's only a few different fabrics that work. It's copper, it's nickel, it's silver, and it's steel. And the copper and the nickel don't hold up, and you don't really want those as your fabric. So we're basically left with silver and steel as a means of protecting ourselves. And people are getting nickel-based paint and bringing back the lead paint to protect themselves. But essentially, we can do two things. We can prevent these towers from coming into our neighborhoods, this 5G rollout, by becoming activists and bringing this information to the community, because the state level and the bigger government, like the state and the federal level, they're not going to look out for us. So we have to take it to the streets and to the local levels, like your town council, your county, your city, and bring this to their attention. Just like if you wanted to get a stop sign put into your neighborhood or a street light or something like that, you can do petitions and have ordinances put in place to remove or prevent these cell towers, this 5G rollout. But if this 5G does come, we're going to have to protect ourselves one way or another.
And I've just tweeted a link, by the way, to Spero, S-P-E-R-O, protectionclothing.com. I've tweeted a link to it, so folks can get on there and have a look. It's a really good website. It's really easy to navigate, and it's very well described, so brilliant. Matt, I want to ask you this. I've been thinking about you coming back on the programme. Since you made the film Frankenskies, the movie, and when we talked about it, I was very effusive in my praise of it, and I meant it. It's brilliantly researched and brilliantly put together. So here's the question for you. Since you got into understanding this agenda and making the film right up to November 2019, where we are now, has awareness around the dangers of non-ionizing radiation, EMF and 5G, has awareness grown? Are you winning the battle?
Well, the awareness is growing, definitely. People are honoring the truth because it's becoming so much more self-evident. I kind of think the stars are aligning literally. The truth is surfacing. Winning, I don't know about that word. That's a very big word. I think we need a lot more support, and a lot more people need to honor that truth and step up as activists and realize that Superman or Batman or whoever's not going to do it for them, that they have to honor it and not live in fear, but step up and share that information with their friends, family, and peers and be the change that they want to see. We all have to play our part. So we're not necessarily there to say we're winning, but there is a massive wave of awareness. Also with chemtrails, 5G awareness, EMF radiation awareness, and the geoengineering awareness. The push to normalize geoengineering, to say that we need to spray the metallics in our sky to prevent global warming, to save ourselves from ourselves. People are starting to scratch their heads and ask questions. Where I live in Northern California, we've been pushed around by the power company. Our power's been shut off a few times. 2.5 million people have lost power recently.
Yeah.
And they say it's because of fire dangers and because of wind. Well, the winds are engineered, and the fires can be snuffed out with engineered rainstorms, but instead they engineer windstorms on top of these fires. Meanwhile, they're spraying fire accelerants in the chemtrail constituents on these forests, aluminum oxide and barium salt. So people are really waking up en masse. But what are you going to do? We're also being programmed and conditioned and normalized through all of the media. I recently watched Children of Men, the 2006 film. Mate, this is a 5G apocalypse where all of a sudden no one can have children, and that's what the 5G game is. Children born and raised in a 5G environment will suddenly not be able to procreate because the 1 millimeter size wave, as it absorbs, it will prevent women from being able to have eggs grow in their body, essentially, and by the time they get of age, they won't be able to procreate. Can I actually break down 5G really quick? It's been a little while since we've been on the show, and I actually was able to research this and simplify it.
Go right ahead, my friend. Of course you can. Let me just remind our listeners before you take the floor. We've got Matt Landman live on the programme from Northern California, Frankenskies, themovie.com, but also please check out SparrowProtectionClothing.com. I've just put a link to it there. The nice thing about this is I'm not going to make any assumptions, but any profits I would imagine that Matt makes from the programme, from the closing, I imagine it's going to go back into the activism and into the film making. So we got to support guys like this. Yes, my friend, talk about 5G. There are people listening to this for sure for the first time who've never heard anything negative about 5G. What's happening? What's going on?
And yes, all the profits roll into further providing protection. I can't wait to really protect the children, the infants. I can't wait to have a silver baby hooded onesie for infants, and then to protect the next generation as they grow in this world, because not everywhere will we be able to prevent the cell towers from being put up to 5G, and they are predatory, unfortunately. And then also, Frankenskies 2, please check out GoFundMe.com/Frankenskies2, because the film Frankenskies 1 was a historical chronological timeline documentary starting in 1922 and ending in June 2017. From June 2017 to present, there's a whole nother movie that needs to be created to expose the geoengineering normalization, the fire agenda, the wildfire agenda to corral humanity into cities, and all of this normalization that we need to realize through the media, through Geostorm, the 2017 movie, you name it. There's a lot going on. So 5G, very important. We're shrouded with fear, media control, disinformation. A lot of it is all based in fear so that we cannot empower ourselves and be inspired with the truth. And the truth is very simple. I tried to research 5G online, even using a different search engine aside from Google, DuckDuckGo. I could not understand or figure out what 5G even was. So much disinformation out there. And I'll tell you, 5G with satellites, disinformation, propaganda. 5G escalating into 6G, 7G, 8G, 9G, 10G, all this 10G stuff, this news you see about 6G, that is propaganda, that is fake news, meant to disempower us. Okay? Elon Musk, 20,000 5G satellites, disempowering fake news. It's not real. And I'll tell you why. Here it is, very simple. What we transmit for radio wave signals in invisible space, it's all called smart. It's basically called smart. Okay? It's wireless. And everything that we use that is wireless, everything from smart meters to Wi-Fi to Bluetooth to radio waves that we have, AM and FM radio waves, everything, all of that smart tech in our homes and outside of our homes, all of it, including 5G, it's all radio waves. And radio waves are actually light waves. All right, so surrounding us we have light, and we can see it with our eyes, so we can understand that. We can understand what we can see. But there's light that we cannot see. Actually, we can only see 1% of the light that's around us. 1%, because our eyes are very limited in what we can perceive. We can perceive Roy G. Biv, the color spectrum, red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, whatever, right? So on the edge of the color spectrum are colors we can't see, such as infrared and ultraviolet. And this is based on the size of the light wave. So when I say size, I mean the length, the wave length. So there's these waves, like waves in an ocean, and from crest to crest is the size of the wave, the length of the wave. And those light waves are all around, okay? So it's not just a one wave or anything like that. It's all around us, just like light is. So if you have orange light and you make that wave slightly larger, this is in nanometers, but slightly larger, you get red light. And red, slightly larger, is infrared. So size of the wave, infrared. The slightly larger wave than red makes infrared, and now it's invisible to us. We cannot see it. Just like violet light and blue light, if it's slightly smaller, it's ultraviolet, and then we can't see that either, but it's impactful. It burns our skin, and it dictates our circadian rhythm, our biological clock, and that's why we need to learn about blue light and know why blue light is throwing off our clocks and why red light is actually beneficial. Size matters. So the radio wave spectrum, which is light waves that are just outside our visual perspective, but they're still light waves. They travel at 186,000 miles per second. They are light waves, just slightly different in size, just like how infrared is different in size and we can't see it. Radio waves are light waves that are different in size and we can't see them. So imagine that FM tower, that AM tower, that cell tower. it's really emitting light, shining it as far as it can shine it. And we just can't see that light. So an AM radio tower is the biggest light wave, or radio wave rather. And in the whole radio wave spectrum, the largest one is AM and the smallest one is 5G. The 5G is 1 millimeter in size, and the AM wave is 1,000 feet. All right. The 1,000 feet AM wave, it can travel great distances. It goes through humans, it goes through cars, it goes through buildings, and we can pick it up anywhere, just about in the woods and whatnot, in the mountains.
Yeah.
FM waves are 10 feet in size. They can travel great distances as well. They go through us. They go through everything. Wi-Fi waves are about a foot, but they modulate, so they range from about a foot down to a couple inches. Okay, and then all the other checks that we have, it's still rather large. It's nowhere near the 5G size, because having it the 5G size doesn't make sense, because the smaller the wave, the less distance that it can go. And it being 1 millimeter in size, here's the summation of everything that I'm saying, everything that everyone can take away from this. The 5G wave is 1 millimeter in size, and because of its characteristics, its size, it absorbs. 5G absorbs. 5G absorbs into everything it hits. Does Wi-Fi absorb? No, it goes through bricks. It goes through people. It goes through things because of its size. Do smart meters absorb? Does 4G absorb? Does AM or FM absorb? Does Bluetooth absorb? None of the radio wave, smart tech, light waves that we carry data on now, none of them absorb. That doesn't make sense as a carrier wave. A carrier wave that absorbs into everything it hits, that's not a carrier wave for technology to carry information for telecom. That's a weapon, okay? So, sorry to people on it, but that's it. And we can't see it in fear. We have to live in hope and not be disempowered, because when you're in this frequency of fear, you can't do anything. You're stuck in fight or flight. You're not empowered to go speak to your city council and bring the information and honor the truth and bring it forward to them.
I hope we've not lost Matt.
We have to honor the truth,
back.
even though it's a little scary.
Just lost you for a second there. You just dipped out, but you came back very quickly. We didn't miss anything. So when people talk to me and they say, my friends who they don't listen to programs like mine, and they say, "Oh, 5G, brilliant. Because of 5G, I will be able to instantaneously access and download information that might have taken me minutes." And in business, the difference between minutes, can mean thousands of dollars. So they're thrilled with it. They might be listening now and they might say, okay, I get what Matt is saying about it being, absorbing and not being more of a weapon than a carrier. But why am I being told by my provider that it's going to allow me to access massive amounts of data in a very short period of time?
Well, it's the whole adage that they wouldn't do that to us. But
right.
Look at the flu shots, and look at the fluoride in the water, and look at GMO, and look at just about everything else. I mean, people need to kind of take a step back and honor the truth. When waves of this intensity absorb, they are micro-sized waves that are absorbing into us. There's accumulating non-ionizing radiation. It's called non-thermal, and it accumulates, and we're going to see some serious impacts. People have to honor the truth, honor the information, and realize that there's long-term harmful side effects to this. And if they're excited about download speed, then good for them. They should at least protect themselves and do a little research. But for those of us that know about it, I wouldn't want this on my block. And the people, the telecom executives, these rich people who are designing this, that live in Mill Valley, California, just over the bridge of San Francisco, they banned it from their neighborhood.
Wow,
okay?
Matt. Wow.
The rich Verizon executives, the executives do not want this in their neighborhood because they know of the harms. So because it absorbs into everything it hits, it can only travel about 500 feet, right? That's why satellites propagating the wave don't make any sense. Every cloud it hits or plane, the waves can't go that far. So because you need a cell tower out every 500 feet, that means a cell tower everywhere, and that's why trees are being cut down. And this absorbing into everything means it absorbs into trees, it bugs, people, just below our nerves in our skin, causing all these different problems, throwing off our biological clock, causing cellular division, leading to tumors, leading to cancer, leukemia, even just the disruption of the circadian rhythm is really important. This light, because it's light, it throws off our biology, just like the LED street lamps or the blue light coming off our phones. It's really important to get yourself a blue light filter. If you learn about blue light and you know that blue light is close to ultraviolet and that's actually throwing off your clock, you can get seriously depressed from all this. There's a National Institute of Health research study in the States where they were trying to determine why all these utility workers that worked on cell towers, they were committing suicide at a staggering rate. Come to find out, it's because every time these utility workers worked on these cell towers, their biological clocks were being told that it was bright light, that is basically high noon, and they were never getting to the point where they're producing serotonin and melatonin in the middle of the night because their circadian clocks were being reset every time. So when you're looking at a blue light screen right before you go into bed, your body's being told you're in bright sunlight and your clocks are being reset, and it can cause all sorts of problems. Really important to understand blue light.
Really important. Matt, a number of people have emailed me to put to you a question that I was going to put to you anyway, because Chris Busby, scientist, has been on the programme several times talking about this. Not recently, though. I think the last time was a few months ago. But friends of ours, Phil in Florida and others, hi Phil in Florida, by the way, have said, can Matt explain in more layman terms, what does he mean by 5G absorbs? Can he better explain that? What do you mean by that frequency absorbs?
So if you stick something in the microwave, it's designed, there's invisible small waves that are a certain size. And those certain size waves hit the food in the microwave, and they make the water in the food bounce around, and it heats it, and the waves absorb into the food. If they didn't absorb into the food, they would just be casually going through them like an AM wave or whatever, and it wouldn't heat it, right? So absorbing means it goes into what it hits. All right, and that's where the problems can arise, and that's where this depopulation agenda arises and whatnot, because these millimeter-sized waves really impact things that are really small, like developing fetus and whatnot. So what I mean by absorbs is once it hits things, it doesn't go anywhere. An AM radio wave is a light wave that is 1,000 feet in wavelength. It's a really big wave traveling around, and it goes through everything that it hits. At the very smallest end of the radio wave spectrum is 5G at 1 millimeter. Let me put it this way. It was created by the military, and it was created as an active denial system, ADS. And you can look this up in even Wikipedia. The active denial system is a 1 millimeter size wave that is created by the military in the Middle East. And what they do is create this frequency fence where the millimeter size wave is tuned so that it absorbs into people's skin and it hits the nerves so you can actually feel it. All right, 5G, you can't feel it. It absorbs right below the nerves. Otherwise, it wouldn't even pass. People would realize, oh,
they'd know straight away. Let me ask you this. This is really important. Matt Landman is our guest. We've got Matt for another 20 minutes. Time is flying. Lots and lots of interest in this. Grant wants to know about shipping to Canada for the Sparrow clothing. Just a quick answer there. Can you ship to Canada? Sure you can.
No problem, yes. I'm doing the international sales on the side right now because I wanted to not bite off as much as I can, too much and I can chew, but I'm going to flip the switch and put in the plug in to be able to do. Just contact me, and I'm happy to do sales anywhere in the world right now. Reach out to me, Matt at sparrowprotectionclothing.com or frankenskies@gmail.com, and we'll get it set up. No
Good
problem.
stuff.
Also, I've got black beanies coming. And right now I have silver maternity aprons. If anybody is pregnant, I really want to protect pregnant women. I have these aprons that are silver, and they're amazing. And please also, Frankenskies 2, I just bought frankenskies2.com, and I'm really excited about getting this new movie out. If you can share around or show your support, GoFundMe.com/Frankenskies2.
Sounds good, Matt. Now, having listened to Chris Busby and having listened to people like yourself in the past, I do believe that if this is rolled out in every neighbourhood and these transmitters are placed every 500 metres, I believe that there will be a massive increase, and a sudden one, in the incidences of tumours and cancers and other health problems. I have no doubt about that. That's going to be a bad thing for those behind the agenda, isn't it? Because people are going to notice that really quickly. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, I asked this of Chris Busby. He agreed. He reckoned that we're going to see a big escalation of cancers, tumours. And that's not going to be good for those behind it. Because people are going to say, hang on, what the hell is going on? And even the media won't be able to ignore it. What do you think?
I think that people are totally brainwashed and mind controlled, and no one's going to be able to point out the elephant in the room, just like they can't point out the elephant in the room right now, brother. People take their children in, get them vaccinated, and the baby dies on the spot. And still, they can't even point the finger at the vaccine makers? I mean, come on. Like a cell tower out front of someone's house, people will have neurological issues, yes. And what are they going to do? They're going to say, oh, the cell tower out front of my house, I think it's causing neurological issues. And they'll say, well, how do you know it's that tower or not the 20,000 satellites over your head that are fake news? People are totally controlled by the controlled media, and they will never they will never say that they've done wrong. I don't think anybody will ever point the finger at it until there's like literal people chopping down those towers because, I mean, look, at Ripon, California, RIPON, they put a cell tower there on school grounds at an elementary school. The parents stood up and they said, look, 5 kids have cancer, 3 teachers have cancer. We want this thing removed, and they demanded it, and they got it removed, all right? And that was amazing. That was a huge, very small victory. I think there will be lots of huge, very small victories, but all together, as a majority, just like how Big Pharma gets to get away with what they get away with, and fluoride is still in my drinking water for no reason, and that's medication without consent, you know? Medication without consent, a neurotoxin is added to my drinking water, and everyone's fine with that. A cell tower on your street that is causing stillborns and cancer and depression, people won't even, I mean, honestly, it's going to take a lot of awareness, and we really have to bring the awareness and honor it. Every person that knows it has to bring it forward, or it'll just happen, honestly.
Yeah, you're right about the various impacts, the loss of fertility. Isn't it amazing, Matt, that fertility, male fertility, has been on the decline for several decades now. Even the BBC running stories on this in the last 12 months alone. And I reckon, and I don't have any proof, but the introduction of mobile phones or cell phones, as you call them there, they must have played a huge part in this male fertility problem, because so many men for so many years have been carrying the devices around in their trousers pockets. Isn't that right?
It's you nailed it on the head right there, mate. And the women have it in their butt pocket, these phones. I recommend anyone out there who really wants to know the truth, get yourself an EMF radiation meter. You can get them for like 30 pounds, $40, you know. You can get them for $500 too. They all work. And what you will learn is when you are on that smartphone, or when it's even on and it's updating, it's filling the room with radiation. Not just the little area around you, those little stickers or those little face sleeves that say that they're preventing the radiation. No, the whole room. Imagine it's a big flashlight shining so much bright light that it can connect to the light, which is the cell tower down the street or on the mountainside or whatever. It has to do a lot of work. So that amount of radiation is pushing out so much, and you've got it in your pocket. It is, yes, you're right. Population's on the decline, and people aren't even asking why. Really quick, I want to break down a history of all this, because we should have learned about this, and we didn't, just like a lot of things that we don't learn about and we should have. Microwave sickness was first reported in 1932 in Germany. In 1954, the term radio wave sickness was coined as an occupational disease as radar personnel started showing symptoms of sterility. 1971, the U.S. Naval Medical Research Institute. 1971, Richie. They concluded 2,300 studies showing biological effect and clinical manifestation attributed to microwaves and radio frequency radiation. In 1986, finally, the international community came together after the Chernobyl meltdown And the global scientific community learned that low-level, non-thermal radiation caused harm and that it built up and it accumulated. That was in 1986. Finally, in 1990, in the States, the EPA drafted a report recommending EMF be classified as a carcinogen, citing 33 conclusive international studies linking EMF to brain tumors, leukemia, all these cancers. 1993, FDA biologists came out and said, yes, EMF radiation cancer link. And the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and the FDA, the Federal Drug and Food Administration in the United States, they're supposed to look out for the people, basically, for the health and the human health and the environment. And so finally, in 1996, the FCC, the Spectrum Auctioning Agency, they're nobody, They came out and they released a statement forbidding the EPA and the FDA from researching EMF and proclaims that they're now the sole authority on EMF safety. Okay, this is a revolving door between big telecom and the Spectrum Auctioning Agency, and now they're the ones in charge of saying whether or not this stuff is safe.
Amazing.
And it's just like this in Europe, just the same. It's a revolving door from private corporations to these governmental institutions. They scratch each other's backs and fill each other's pockets, and they say, oh, no, it's perfectly safe, don't worry, while they put something in our pockets that we don't even know how much radiation comes off these things. But if you get yourself a meter, you'll really see, oh my gosh, I should stick this thing on airplane mode, or get one of these pouches from Matt, or wow, maybe I should be wearing a hat. John McCain, he's a politician over in the States, he got a brain tumor right where he held his phone. And he said, I got a brain tumor right where I hold my phone. He got the tumor removed. Then he got another tumor there and he died. It's becoming common awareness, but still people love their gadgets. I've gone backwards. I've got this Verizon slider flip phone thing, and my meter shows no radiation when the phone is just sitting there. When I'm using it, which I'm using it now, very, very minimal radiation. So still the technology exists to not be completely blasted by radiation, and I really think it's important to learn about this now and to mitigate our exposure now before we enter into a world of 5G.
Yeah, people need to arm themselves with the knowledge. You and I spoke in the past about geoengineering and its relationship to climate change, and I believe that I don't believe that man-made CO2 is warming the planet, but I believe there is an agenda to make us believe that, and one of the ways they do it is by creating very, very strange and very strong weather phenomena. That's what I believe, using the technology that you and I have spoken about in the past. And I just wonder, in this country, Matt, as you are well aware, they are talking about becoming carbon neutral by the year 2030. And they want people to change the way they live, the food they eat, the cars they drive. And I wonder how much the smart technology do you think will be used to spy on people and to keep people in line as they roll out this climate agenda in the coming years? Smart meters, smart fridges, smart ovens, spying on us, making sure that our carbon footprint is neutral. What do you think?
Again, you nailed it on the head, mate. You're exactly right. It's all part of this one overlapping agenda. When people talk about fluoride and they don't know that fluoride is actually a byproduct of aluminum, and it loves to bond to aluminum, and then we got aluminum in our vaccines and our food and our air, and then fluoride in the drinking water, you can see how it's all interconnected. The smart technology will allow the 5G will allow the smart technology to allow an AI grid network that can monitor. Yes.
Yeah.
So when you get in a body scanner at the TSA, which I do not recommend ever doing that, when you get inside that body scanner, on the side of that body scanner machine, it says 1 millimeter wave technology. You get inside that body scanner and it blasts a 1 millimeter size wave all around you, kind of like how sonar bounces off. Well, the 1 millimeter size wave absorbs, and they can make a perfect map of your body and see if you have like a razor blade strapped to your thigh or something. Well, in that regard, the 5G environment is just like that. It can monitor everything that you do, what you have in your pockets, everything, right? So yes, it will be a complete monitoring ability where they can even change the frequency around you. I mean, if they wanted to make a frequency fence or change the thoughts in your head, we're very much susceptible to frequency technology, right? I mean, we are beings of frequencies from our heart to our brains to everything. So yes, the answer is yes, and it's very much a weird dystopian reality where we can't give away those powers to the state, and then the state hands it over to an AI technology to monitor, and then back to geoengineering is climate change, geoengineering is global warming, and the spraying of metallics in our atmosphere and then using radio frequency technology to intersect radio waves with the HAARP technology, ionospheric heaters, they spray chemtrails and then superheat the atmosphere to near the temperature of the sun, causing heat waves, causing drought, causing high pressure systems to control the weather, and then they point the finger at that geoengineered heat wave and say, oh, your carbon emissions did that. You exhale carbon and your cars make carbon. We're going to have to tax your carbon, monitor you, enslave you, and block out your sun with geoengineering. You're welcome. You'll get the bill in the mail. This is total nonsense. And as a civilization, as humans, all breathing air and bleeding red, we have to come together, forget about all these divisive tactics, how tall you are, what sexuality you are, what clothes you wear, every single little bit of it, whether you're left, whether you're right,
doesn't matter.
We all have to come together under this one umbrella and honor the truth and say no to this carbon tax, to this AI takeover. Everyone has to consent to it and go out and buy the 5G phone and adopt this technology for it to work. So really, it's up to us to bring this information forward while we can. Otherwise, we're really going to be backtracking and having to come up with, right now, we can come up with proactive solutions. Otherwise, we're going to have to be really reactive as a society once this all rolls out.
Once it's all rolled out, Deutsche Bank wants to get rid of 18,000 employees and replace them with artificial intelligence programs. Ultimately, the banks want to get rid of pretty much every human being that works for them. So all banking decisions will be made by machines that learn independently. These are terrifying, scary times. On the climate change thing, and I don't believe it's down to Donald Trump, but I do believe our friends across the pond there in the United States are a little bit more wise to the nonsense of the climate change agenda. I think that's true, Matt. I think Americans are more clever and more cute when it comes to realising that man-made climate change by CO2 is a hoax. Am I right?
I don't know. I'll be
know.
honest with you. I see people protesting and they're fighting over the wrong things made. It's insane. And they're really, a lot of people buy it. There is an amazing truth awakening, and I love my brothers and sisters out there. But the controlled media, it's daunting, and you've got climate activists marching because sea levels are rising, but they're not. I haven't seen sea level rise one bit. There's erosion. People don't get the difference between erosion and sea level rise because the media controls the way that they perceive reality. Yeah. So, Richie, I've really been getting into media control, manipulation through predictive programming, disclosure, and like social engineering of through the mainstream Hollywood. And I just want to read off a couple of things really quick. So in 2013, there was a movie called Snowpiercer. Hollywood really does it to us. It's unreal. And we don't realize the extent to which we are controlled and how susceptible our minds are in mass. 2013 Snowpiercer film. It takes place on a train because they're carrying the last remnants of humanity after an attempt at climate engineering.
No way he's dropped out there.
Global warming has unintentionally...
You just dropped out. Sorry about that.
Created an ice age.
Sorry, Matt, you dropped out, but you're back. My apologies. You were telling us about a film, and then it just dropped out momentarily.
So 2013 film. Yeah, Richie, there's a 2013 film called Snowpiercer, and it takes place on a train where the last remnants of humanity are trying to survive on this plane because climate engineering with geoengineering, with chemtrails, they show chemtrails at the very beginning of the film. So climate engineering, in order to stop global warming, has unintentionally killed most of humanity. So this 2013 film shows that they tried to stop global warming with chemtrails and they killed everybody on Earth. So that's unbelievable. Also, I watched AI, the Steven Spielberg movie, 2001, AI. The entire film, first off, global warming has caused New York to be underwater, so it's a fear-mongering global warming piece in 2001. But mind you, this almost 3-hour-long film, it's this emotional heartstrings the whole time. You fall in love with this artificial intelligent child robot. You want the robot to get a soul in the end. He's all chasing this Pinocchio theme.
Yeah.
And he really wants to become a real boy so his mom can love him. And thousands of years go by, and at the very end of the movie, you just want the robot to be a human, and you love robots at the end. So that's really interesting. So if you take that into consideration, along with everything else, Children of Men, 2006, the movie, I know I talked about it earlier in the segment, but it's a 5G apocalypse. It is what they're going for with the 5G agenda, to make it so all of a sudden everyone's sterile and they don't know why. Well, it's because you had a 5G phone in your pocket the whole time, people.
We've had loads of comments on Twitter. People should go to twitter.com and input Richie Allen Show, all one word. Loads of comments. Mwinga has agreed with you about Snowpiercer. Faisal says the lack of sea level rise is the elephant in the climate change room. Why are the Maldives still there when Al Gore insisted they wouldn't be? He cashed in before anyone noticed. An enormous amount of comments on this segment as well. Just before we do run out of time, I do want to plug again the website for the clothing, Sparrow Clothing. So give us that website, Matt, and tell us as well about the crowdfunding. Remind us for Frankenskies too.
Thank you so much, Richie, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah,
Frankenskies 2, I can't wait for it to come out. The sooner the better. Really important information to disclose to humanity, because people are really coming to a point where they can accept this information. It wasn't this easy a couple years ago. A couple years ago, I was doing Frankenskies screenings, and no one wanted to hear the word geoengineering or chemtrails. Now people are really excited to honor the truth, and people who never would have ever woken up are waking up. So I think we're reaching a critical mass, the 100th monkey. So please check out GoFundMe.com/Frankenskies2. Please visit FrankenskiesTheMovie.com as well if you haven't seen the film. It starts off in 1922. It's a very important piece to share and to embrace. Anybody can learn something from the film. And then Sparrow, which is a Latin word for hope, S-P-E-R-O, Sparrow, ProtectionClothing.com. Please look forward to all of the new items coming out there. Men's underwear to protect men so that they can reproduce, women's underwear, baby blankets, baby clothes, hooded sweatshirts, T-shirts, camisoles, all lined with silver to protect us from this increasingly devastating electromagnetic frequency radiation environment that we live in. I mean, as if smart meters and Bluetooth and all of this stuff wasn't enough. So please embrace the truth. Try to get yourself an EMF meter to see the soup of invisible radiation that you're in, and try to limit your exposure to it. Learn about putting your phone on airplane mode, unplug your Wi-Fi router at night, learn about the blue light filters. All of this is very simple information, but we just need to honor it and not live in fear and live in hope. And when we live in hope, we can honor the truth with integrity and live it and embrace it and protect ourselves, instead of being victims and living this victim fear mentality, which the powers that be, they want us to be there. So thank you so much. And please check me out on Facebook, Matt Landman, on YouTube, Matt Landman, and actualactivists.com. Please visit actualactivists.com, your one-stop shop for 5G truth, fluoride, vaccines, chemtrails, you name it.
Yeah, you've got tens and tens of thousands of followers on Facebook there. Matt, thanks for coming back on. We'll talk again very soon in the new year, and good luck with the clothing line and all the best with the crowdfunding for Frankenskies 2. I look forward to you telling me that you've completed that, and we can talk about it as well in the future. Godspeed to you there in Northern California, my friend. Look after yourself, and I look forward to the next time. Bye for now, Matt.
Bye. Thank you so much, Richie.
Matt Landman, live on the line from Northern California. Really interesting stuff, that. For those who are new to the programme, and they might have expected me to be interjecting and asking Matt, multiple times during that conversation to talk more about the fires in California and the relationship between those and geoengineering. look, just listen back to previous programs. Watch the films that watch the film that he made. Watch other films made by other researchers, and you'll understand why I have a personal, sympathetic approach to their findings and their research. I believe they're bang on. However insane it might sound to people who have come to this program for the first time, I believe they're right, these people. And that's what it is, okay? There are plenty of programs on iTunes and Podomatic where I'm digging down and challenging people like that for proof, and sometimes they provide it and they've got answers. Sometimes they say, Richie, it's my best guess with all the information I have available. Ultimately, you've got to make your own mind up, and I do recommend you watch the films for yourself, because I've already had somebody say, oh, you give Gilad a bit of a tough time. I didn't actually, but you know, you just let Matt, first of all, difficult, Matt's on a mobile phone, Northern California, there was a delay on the line anyway, but watch the films and make your own mind up. Now, just before we close out today, Jeremy Corbyn, I think, has given an interview to the BBC. It's probably Laura Kuenssberg. Might be. Is it? No, it's Andrew Neil. The reason why I said probably Laura Kuenssberg is because she's the BBC's political editor. But in fact, he's given an interview to Andrew Neil. And I think Neil has pressed him to apologise over his handling of anti-Semitism. This is in the wake of Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mirvis, who said that a new poison sanctioned from the very top of the Labour Party has taken root. Have a listen to this. Corbyn with Andrew Neil a very short time ago.
Wouldn't you like to take this opportunity tonight to apologise to the British Jewish community for what's happened?
What I'll say is this. I am determined that our society will be safe for people of all faiths. I don't want anyone to be feeling insecure in our society. And our government will protect every community against the abuse they receive on the streets, on the trains, or in any other form of life.
Try one more time.
No, hang on a minute, Andrew. Can I explain what we're trying to do?
You have, and you've been given plenty of time to do it. I asked you if you wanted to apologise.
Andrew, I don't want anyone to go through what anyone has gone through.
And you've said that several times. I understand that, Mr. Corbyn. I was asking you about an apology. Let's move on to Brexit.
Well, hang on. Can I just make it clear? Racism in our society is a total poison.
You've said that several times. So, you know, we get that. I'm not arguing about that.
Be it Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, or any other form of racism. And I want to work with every community to make sure it's eliminated.
Right.
That is what my whole life has been about.
You made that clear, and people will make up their own minds.
He is as impotent as a Nevada State Boxing Commissioner, is Jeremy Corbyn, isn't he? Isn't he awful, isn't he? Isn't he dreadful? Listen back if you've come in on the programme late to my conversation with Gilad Atzmon. Gilad's got an interesting take on Corbyn. He takes a different approach to the one I take on Corbyn. So for that, have a listen back. I mean, it's a very good conversation. I had a very interesting conversation with Gilad Atzmon about anti-Semitism in the UK, about Jewish power, about Jewish identity. Very interesting stuff if you missed any of that. Right, that's nearly it then for the programme today. Thanks again to Matt Landman. Enjoyed speaking with Matt again. It's been such a long time. And I wish him the very best with Frankenskies 2. If you haven't seen Frankenskies the movie, do check it out. It's really worth showing it to somebody who thinks that you are as mad as a March hare. Here's an old one now. If somebody thinks you're as mad as a March hare, you're crazy with these conspiracy tinfoil hat stuff, sit them down and show it to them. Have a look at this. Consider this. Leave your attitude at the door and just watch this. See what you think. It's very good. Then play them back interviews that I've done with Chris Busby, who's a genius and a verifiable, certifiable expert in the field of non-ionising radiation. And then ask them, are they so sure that you, their friend, are as mad as a March hare? Right, I'll be back with you tomorrow morning. That is Wednesday at 9:30 for the newspaper review on YouTube. It's crap, but it is a little bit of fun. looking through the papers. YouTube.com/Richie Allen Show. That's the YouTube channel. Massive thanks to Gilad Atzmon. Very interesting stuff in there one. And again, Matt Landman, we've just heard from in the last short while. Phil, I just saw an email from Phil who asked about flyers on Matt Landman's website, flyers and bumper stickers. Phil is a peace activist, a really good guy. He was on the programme a couple of years ago. Must get him back, in fact. Be nice to have Phil back. Now Phil says people like Matt should have printable flyers. And I agree with that. No harm in it, that you can give to people. I will mention it to him, Phil. In fact, I'll connect you to Matt on email if I remember to do that later on. Otherwise, I'll email him myself. So thanks for that. Right, I'm out of here now. I'm out of here. We'll finish with the Lightning Thieves today in the Life of Riley. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and one another. I have been Richie Allen. Speak tomorrow.